Hi, welcome. This is my colleague Christophe Benoit from Erasmus University College in Brussels, and he will talk about our research project about wearable devices, and he will talk about how they can be used and some issues, some interesting aspects about them and so on.
Hello, and my colleague Stephen Palmaers from the PXL University College in Hasselt will be talking about privacy and security of those wearable devices. Welcome as well for me. And so I will be starting to talk about wearables, and in fact wearables are nothing new. We have used them a lot, and I especially have used the polar heart rate monitor quite a lot. It was 20 kilos ago in my career as an athlete. So we are used to them, and we tend to use them, those wearables, those new wearables such as the smartwatch, the smart glass, like we are used to. We are specialized in using them for monitoring our health, the heart rate, our quantified self and so on. But there's a problem with it, because if we use them as monitoring our health, well, that narrows down the scope of the usability. It's only for health. So why bother? And also retention is a problem. Okay, I can use it, it's a gadget, and I track my health, I track my heart rate, but why? And most of those applications tend to fade down in approximately 3 months. Like we do every new year, we have good intentions, but what stays after 3 months of those good intentions? Nothing. So, but what is really new about the wearables is this ability to communicate and to interact with each other. And you know, we already have our smartphone, and we don't leave home without our smartphone, but we leave home without our wallet. So that's a bit odd. We have our personal smartphone, and we don't want to leave it behind. We always have it with us. And I can imagine a set of wearables on my body or on my clothing who are interacting with each other and who are monitoring what I'm doing, and who are centralization of data in our smartphone. So how is my stomach doing this morning? Well, I swallow a digital pill and I watch on my smartwatch, okay, everything is fine, I can go working. But here again, the problem is, this is a very egocentric thing. So why should I bother about my health when I'm not have any health issues? If I don't have a stomach problem, why should I swallow digital pills, where costs a lot? So, and if I do want to measure myself, how do I handle it in question of retention? Well, we have two problems to solve. One is the retention problem, and the other one is the broadening of the scope of the usability of wearables. When we want to solve the retention problem, there's an industry who has solved it for us before, and it's the gaming industry. They had this problem: how do I keep my gamers gaming? Well, a lot of businesses are watching those games and those game industry to see how they are doing with that retention problem, and I call it engagement modeling, because gaming and working are a bit of taboo. So the Apple Watch has been made a good example of these gamification. They use endless progress bars. They use permanent feedback. So you always, when you look at your watch, you always see how far you have done with your competition. And you have a scoreboard. It works. I have a colleague, this is his scoreboard, and he had a problem during the weekends. He saw he couldn't manage to have his completions all filled. So he started again with his home trainer. So it works. You get motivated. And if you want to explore those engagement modeling, I can suggest the book of Yukai Choi about gamification and his Octalysis framework. The other problem to solve is the bigger scope we want for the wearables. It has to go away from only being health monitoring. And I always said it, we have our smartphone, everybody has it, and we will always have it with us. And on the other hand, something is coming, and that is the Internet of Things. On the one hand, we have the personalization, the digital me in our smartphone, and on the other hand, we have the digital it, things who are part of the Internet. And in between, the place of the wearables is in fact in between and must act as an interface between the digital me and the digital it. So what are the activities of wearables? Well, you can use them to check in and to check out. Think about the festival, how it works now. Well, you have to pay and you have to have a ticket, you have to have a bracelet and so on and so on. But you can use your smartwatch to check in, to check out, take a train, take a metro, a subway. You can use it for small payments. Go to a bakery shop and you can pay with your smartwatch. You can add personal contextual notification. I go to a museum, I watch a piece of art, I get a notification because in my personal me, I have noted that I'm very interested in abstract art, so I can get the notifications. You can use it for identification. Think about loyalty cards. My wallet is very heavy, not because of the money, but because of the loyalty cards. You need loyalty cards for everything. So get rid of them and all by the smartwatch. Even your identity card can be used by a smartwatch. So we have to evolve from a voluntarity of using smartwatch and smart glasses to a necessity. So not a necessity because it's obligatory, but because you see other people who can pass through a fast lane because they can check in with their smartwatch, and you have to buy a ticket and have it stamped and so on and so on. So evolving from a voluntarity to a necessity. That's how developers have to see the building of their applications. But applications, I don't use that word I don't want to use that word building apps, because in my takeaways I don't want developers to only build apps. They have to build engaging experiences. You have to build it broader, and you have to take the context with you. Context is king, and it will stay king if you want to your app and your smart device to survive. I will now give the word to my colleague Steven, who will be talking about security and privacy. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Christophe. So, in our research project, we are working on several cases in logistics. We are seeing how wearables can be integrated in healthcare, in cure, in therapy. But we are also looking at the human aspect of using those wearables, be it in your free time, in your professional time. So some issues that pop up are privacy and security. First, I will zoom into the privacy issues, and then I will go to the security aspects. So when we look at the privacy aspect, we can see that there are two perspectives. You have both the perspective from the user itself, where the user is using the wearable device, be it a smartwatch or a wearable, and you have the impact on the user's social network, the colleagues of the user, the family, passes by on the street, in the train, who knows? So those are two perspectives that we have to look into when we are covering privacy. In general, there are three categories of issues. There are, first of all, the aspects that are data specific, so the type of data that is collected, what is done with that data, who owns the data. Those are some aspects that are quite important. We have issues that are specifically related to the sensor, to the device that is being used to capture information. It can be a camera, it can be a GPS device, it can be a microphone, whatever. What also happens is device or application specific. So in that case, privacy issues tend to lead to social or possibly criminal abuse. The main issue with wearable devices is that those wristbands, smartwatches, glasses, they are possibly continuously and also discreetly collecting data, maybe processing data, be it on the device itself or in the cloud. They are transmitting data, and on the server side, the data is being stored or maybe transformed. And when we are talking about data, we mean, first of all, sensor data. It could be your heart rate, your body temperature, your location. It could be images when you are using a camera embedded in your smart glasses. It could be video. You could be filming other people without them knowing it. And what might happen then is that people in the street, for example, but also in a company setting, they might perceive that they are being surveilled by you, maybe, by the user, but also maybe by the company, by, who knows, the government, or maybe hackers that might somehow get into that data. People are also afraid that by combining different data sources, that maybe some details might be exposed that they didn't want to be public. That's also an important aspect. And what is also often problematic with the use of wearable devices is that the user is not always aware of what the data is being collected, what is being done with it, or maybe even that the user didn't approve with the collection or the exploitation of the data. So when we are looking at different types of data, those are a few questions that might pop up in the user's mind. So first of all, what information is gathered? In what detail is it gathered? And how is it collected? Most users are not really aware what is happening. They know maybe, okay, this device logs my steps every day. It continuously measures my heart rate, but what is effectively done with it? So how long is the information kept? Is it only kept for a few minutes, for a few hours, maybe a year, or till the end of time? Who knows? Also, users might ask, how is the information used? Is it maybe exploited? Is it sold to third parties that might benefit from it? Maybe in the future, companies like Fitbit, Apple, who knows, might be selling my health information to my insurance provider and say, hey, you can get a discount if you use this to prove that you're a healthy person. Well, maybe I'm not that open to receive some advantages because I'm giving away quite a lot of my privacy. Also important is the ownership of the data. So it's not always clear who is the owner of the data. Is it still you, the user? Is it the company? Is it the manufacturer of the device? Is it the app publisher? That's also something that a lot of users that we have talked to are really concerned about. And also, the user wants to have the right to be forgotten. So there must be some button or a sort of form where the user can say, okay, I want to be removed from your system, and all my data from the past has to be removed as well, and no further use of that data is allowed. One of the things that might happen is that you can create different roles for different kinds of people. Suppose in the health situation that you as an end user have the end ownership. Your doctor or your nurse can maybe also see the data. And for example, scientific researchers can also only see anonymized data to help them to further improve the product. An important aspect is also the encryption of data. Is the data encrypted before it is sent? Is it encrypted on the device during transmission, or maybe even afterwards when it's being stored in a database? So an important aspect as well is if the user can modify in a good way or in a bad way, so tamper with the data to prove, like, for example, oh, I only did 2,000 steps today, let's modify it and fake that I did 20,000 steps, so my insurance won't get higher. Is it also possible to delete the data? Those are also quite important issues, mainly from the concern of the user of the application, of the end data. Also, there are some differences between the different types of wearable devices. So the devices we are seeing right now in the market are mostly smartwatches and glasses. So in general, wrist-mounted or head-mounted devices. And at first sight, wrist-mounted devices such as watches seem to be less intrusive or obtrusive to the user. But maybe that's only in first sight. When we talk to several potential users of some applications, a main issue that popped up is that they are mainly concerned about their GPS location. To most users that we asked, the location and the location history was quite sensitive. If someone knows where you are at every time of the day, that's something that users don't really like. They are also quite protective against health-related issues, but mostly GPS. They also have a lot of fear of the lack of access control. They don't know who can access the data, what is done with the data. So when you are creating a wearable application, it's quite important that you, for example, create a policy and you inform the user what is being logged, what is done with the data, what purpose it serves, and so on. And it's quite important that you really do this in a good way, that you inform the user, and the user also explicitly agrees with storing that data, processing that data, and so on. In general, when you are on a train, for example, and you're reading your SMS messages on your smartphone, users are also a little bit concerned, because if you receive sensitive information relating to your partner, your children, or maybe your job, or maybe, who knows, your bank statement, you won't be that comfortable when the person sitting next to you can also read it. So those are also some issues. So there has to be some way for notifications to be like, if they are sensitive, maybe don't show them on the smartwatch unless the user agrees. One of the advantages of using watches and glasses is also that you can operate hands-free in a professional context, for example, in logistics, order picking, warehouse management. This is quite handy, but in the day-to-day activities, you won't possibly use speech recognition to say your PIN code, for example, or to send a sort of a secret text message to someone. So in that case, it's also not that easy. Also, a lot of applications are quite interlinked with the social media. So you post the number of steps you've taken to Facebook or to Twitter. But that might also be an issue, because you are not always aware that the information that you are gathering is also published to your followers and your social network. And in this context, the privacy aspects, the most important thing here is that there are luckily a few protection laws underway that might enable developers, but also users, to know that they are protected by law, and where the laws, possibly per country or European, for example, might decide what can and what can't be done. Then shortly over to the security aspect. Well, as with all new technologies, they create, of course, a lot of new possibilities, but on the other hand, oftentimes there are new security threats. What the users we talked to were most concerned about is the communication. So the smartwatch, for example, or your activity tracker communicates with your application on the smartphone using Bluetooth. And the device itself communicates with a server over Wi-Fi. And users are quite concerned that the transmission of the data is not secured, and that it might be vulnerable for tampering or for interception. Especially with sensitive data such as a PIN code, passwords, or maybe health-related or financial data, this is quite an issue. And it's also important there that as a developer you inform the user, or you make sure that the information stream is secured. Because otherwise you might be susceptible for frauds. Also, users are not that into having their financial and medical history and insights available for everyone. And maybe a last aspect here is that if you have, for example, a smartwatch where you can install applications, those applications can come from third parties that are maybe not that trustworthy as you are. So if you allow your device to install other applications that you might not completely trust, it might be open to malware that will intercept data, that will maybe blur data or tamper with data. And this is also something that is quite an issue. So those were a few of privacy and security issues that I wanted to share with you today. The conclusion of both privacy and security is that actually it's not that different from the security and privacy aspects in the normal use of web applications or mobile applications or whatever. It's another device, but the issues stay more or less the same. And in the end, the device manufacturers, the app developers, and the regulators will hopefully solve all the problems by making the right laws to protect us and to also have it possible for the owners of the applications to make their business work. Thanks a lot.